Hey, and welcome back. So, as we get into user stories and acceptance criteria, it's great to really start with the foundation of what they are and what they're for. Okay, because context is everything when trying to learn something new. So, you may have read Medium articles or books or heard about user stories. They're not really mystical in any kind of way. Um, they are literally just a story about your users that indicate a problem and what they want instead. Okay. And like we've said in previous videos, a lot of what we do in document is to have a conversation and to open dialogue, because one of my favorite quotes is dialogue is the currency of execution. If you're not talking with people, your customers, internal stakeholders, your development team, you're not going to do well. So if you don't like to talk to people, this probably isn't the right field for you, because you got to talk to people all the time and make sure that there's alignment and coordination. And that's probably one of the most difficult parts about the job, is alignment and coordination. But user stories, this is kind of the fruit of what you've been doing, right? This is the output or the outcome of all the discovery that you've done, documented in a very concise statement. Okay, so I'm not going to be really long-winded about this. I'll get straight to the point. What you did when you prioritized your problem statement and your persona, right? The persona has a problem, and that's what you need to solve for, and that's what you've prioritized. This is the foundation for your user story. Okay, so your problem statement is Jocelyn, the animated agency designer, has to use and pay for Protopie to get pro-level animations to finish her Figma prototypes. Okay, that's a problem. She has to use and pay for a separate product to do things that Figma can't do, and Figma's mission and vision is to be the go-to place for designers to create and ship designs faster. Okay, communicate and create. So if they have to use third-party tools that don't have a collaborative aspect, or that they have to pay for, like we've said before in the problem statement videos, you're not living up to your mission and vision. You're not fulfilling it. So this is definitely a very critical problem to solve, in my opinion. But because there's a pricing aspect where people are actually willing to pay for this in other places, there's a twofold benefit. You're pushing closer towards your mission and vision, and also your goals, right, of converting free users. All right, so that's just kind of recapping things we talked about before, but getting back to user stories, this is the foundation. Okay, the way you write out and describe a problem statement is going to directly inverse and mirror how you write the story. So what does that mean? Well, I'll show you. All right. So as Jocelyn, the animated agency designer, I want pro level animations so I don't have to use other design tools to accomplish more advanced animations in my designs. Okay, it might be a little wordy, so I don't have to use other design tools. You could probably leave it at that. Um, but that's the point. You're basically taking the problem and flipping it into, this is what I want so I can do this, right? So the typical format is, as a persona, fill in the blank, I want fill in the blank so that fill in the blank. Okay, when you see user stories taught in many circles and from industry veterans of product management, that's kind of the format. Depending on what organization you're in, or what product team, or what developers you're working with, they may be just that formal, or they may be very informal user stories. I always write mine out fully, even though it drives some of the developers that I work with nuts. And they're like, you don't need to do that. It helps me continue that story and continue that narrative, right? Just because other people might not care about the narrative, they're like, hey, just give me work to do. I want to go develop something. Whenever the organization sees this in your release planning, which we'll talk about in future videos, they get to see the full story written out in this nice, neat, concise sentence, and it gives them a good understanding without you even having to express it verbally. So if you're not even in the room, and whoever's presenting what's coming up in a release or what's coming up in future releases, they know exactly what's being done, who it's being done for, and why. Okay, so that's why I really like doing it this way, even though in some cases you will see user stories written more informally. And again, that happens because user stories, like other things, are meant to have a conversation, right? And create dialogue. Okay? So in a nutshell, that's what user stories are. They're basically the inverse and the mirror of your problem statement. So not only writing out the problem statement, identifying it and prioritizing it, that all has value, but it has value further down the process too when you're actually writing your user stories. Okay, so we're going to get into in the next video the difference between user stories and epics, and then we're going to finish up this section with acceptance criteria. Okay, so now that you know what user stories are, we're going to understand what the right level of abstraction is of whether or not the story is actually an epic story or just a regular story. Okay, so naming conventions can be confusing, but we'll break it down in the next video. So I will see you there.